the causes of World War I, and how to make sense of the different factors, the different events that unfolded in Europe, both long-term and short-term. Some historians use the acronym MAIN. M for militarism, A for alliances, I for imperialism, and N for nationalism. And I think an analytical approach like this does make for much better history than simply telling the story. So do try to adopt analytical approaches to your history. But I would suggest that whilst MAIN is good for remembering these four key factors, I would change the order in which I present them to INAM, because I think at the heart of a good explanation of World War I lies imperialism and nationalism, because it is these forces that really created the tension that was bubbling away in Europe and that led to the alliances, the need for the alliances, and an increasing focus on building up military power. And so I'm going to begin my analysis with imperialism and nationalism. And I will first consider Weltpolitik, or Germany's world policy. That's what Weltpolitik means. Now, Germany was the new kid on the block in Europe. Germany was only created in 1871, and it was created as a result of two wars. The first between Prussia, the largest of the different German states at the time, and Austria-Hungary, and the second between Prussia and France. That these two wars were easily won, and what is more, in the second of the wars against France, that Germany had taken two French provinces, Alsace and Lorraine, meant that Germany had really announced itself on the European stage with a bang, and in the process had made an enemy of France. But what was Weltpolitik? Well, it had three strands to it. First, Germany wanted to be the strongest economic power in Central Europe. Second, it looked at the great power status of Britain and France and wanted to join the club. And this meant having an empire of its own. And so the third strand, in order to gain and keep an empire, Germany wanted a strong navy. Now, each of these strands to Weltpolitik held the potential for clashes with the established European powers. And we first see that in the Anglo-German naval race. You couldn't do anything more to upset Britain in the early 20th century than to challenge its naval supremacy. Britain had a worldwide empire, and as an island also had to protect its own shores. Hence, Britain felt naval supremacy was vital to its very survival. And when Germany started building a strong navy, Britain responded to the challenge by building a battleship, the Dreadnought, that made all other battleships obsolete. For the Dreadnought was bigger, with more powerful guns and with greater speed than any other battleship on the seas. But what is more important is that Germany's challenge to British naval supremacy made Britain see Germany as a threat, and Britain started to look for friends in Europe. So, Germany was ruffling the feathers of the European powers, but it was imperialist clashes with nationalism in the Balkans, in the southeast corner of Europe, that repeatedly endangered the general peace of Europe. For not only did imperialism and nationalism clash most fiercely, but it dragged in other European powers. The problem was that the region was part of the Ottoman or Turkish Empire, but Turkey was known as the sick man of Europe and was struggling to hold on to its empire, whilst both Austria-Hungary and Russia had their own interests in the region and would fall out big time. So it is in the Balkans that the very heart of any good explanation for World War I lies. This wonderful Punch cartoon, Punch was a British magazine which really invented the political cartoon, was published 2 years before World War I broke out, and shows us that Europeans were alert to the dangers of war. You see the pot of Balkan troubles bubbling away, and Europe's major powers, Austria-Hungary, Germany, Russia, France, and Britain, desperately trying to keep the lid down and prevent the troubles boiling over into a wider conflict. But it is this map of the Balkans in 1913 that I used to best explain just what was going on. I remember my geography classes that taught me about tectonic plates rubbing together and forcing earthquakes and tsunamis, or else causing volcanoes to explode. If you haven't covered this yet in geography, you will do. Well, for me, the two imperial powers at the top and the bottom of the Balkans, Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, are the two tectonic plates rubbing against each other. And the earthquake is going to happen in Serbia, with the tsunami waves spreading across Europe. By the time we get to 1913, the date for this map, the Balkans have gone through 4 different wars or crises. And by 1913, nobody is happy. The Ottoman Empire in the Balkans is virtually at an end. Austria-Hungary has gained Bosnia, but is worried that Serbia has grown stronger, while Serbia bitterly resents the fact that Bosnia has been incorporated into the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Serbia's ambition is to unite the Balkan Slavs into a greater Serbia. Now, Slavs are a race, and Russians are in fact Slavs. Consequently, Russia sees itself as the protector of Slavs and supports Serbia's ambitions. But in addition to that, Russia has long held the ambition of taking control of the Straits. And I'm trying to find my cursor here, and I've got it. The Straits are these 2 strips of water here and here. And together, I'll take my cursor out, and together they would enable, or control of them, would enable Russia to bring its exports, and by the way, here I'm pointing at where Russia is at war today in the Ukraine, would enable Russia to take its exports out through the Black Sea, through the Bosphorus Straits. I cannot remember what this sea is called, but you can check it on a map, and through the Dardanelles into the Argan Sea and the Mediterranean. And Russia feels that is vital for its security and for its future, as well as it enabling it to export and, of course, import goods It would also guarantee its navy access into the Mediterranean. Because the problem for Russia is that its other ports are either on its Pacific coastline far to the east, or else in the Baltic, which freezes in the winter and in any case is far from its wheat fields. And so I hope I've gone some way to explaining how imperialism and nationalism were key factors in explaining World War I. And I hope this little presentation proves useful to you. I'll put some written pieces linked to this on my website, History Made Easier. But for now, I do thank you for listening. Cheers.